Hello and welcome to the first episode of Momentum. I've been super excited to kick this one off. We've been waiting, obviously seeing when we're all available and whatnot, but it's finally time to kick off Momentum. Joined by Jake Marketo and Sophie Curtain as well, former players in the NRL and NRLW. Sophie, I'll start with you first. How are we doing? What's the week been like so far? I know that you're studying to be a dietitian and whatnot, so I know that you're pretty busy at the moment. What's the week for yourself been like?
Yeah, I guess obviously it's only Monday today, so pretty hectic first start to the week at a new placement site. So just kind of getting all the onboarding and administrative stuff sorted and working out, I guess, my timetable for the next, month or so. And I guess kind of looking at the work and projects that I've got to complete at the hospital over the next few weeks. But trying to fit in training, rehab, social life, as well as kind of running my own business on top of placement is all very difficult, but having a good time doing it. So yeah, looking forward to see where it all kind of goes over the next few months.
And you're still looking for somewhere to play, I think, as well. I think when we spoke last on the podcast, you were sort of looking for a place to play. Are you playing for club this year? What's happening?
Yeah, so I've got, I had a couple of offers for Harvey Norman, and so I've locked in a team for there at the moment, but still looking to pursue NRLW, obviously first and foremost. But if I'm unable to get, I guess, a contract there, I've already got something secured for Harvey Norman. So that's locked in. But as I said, NRLW doesn't start for a little while, so there's still time.
Can we disclose who the team is yet?
Not officially, but I'll give you a hint. It is aligned with something that you are heavily involved with.
Oh, okay. All right. I like that. I like the sound of that. We'll see what happens. Jakey, how are you, brother?
Mate, I'm running around like a headless chook. Obviously, just moved back down to Wollongong about a week ago, so I'm just pretty much getting everything in a line for myself, profession-wise, sitting down, having conversations, emails, all that sort of stuff, getting some things transferred over from the Queensland sector into the New South Wales sector. So I had a bit of moving around to do today, but it's all taking shape, which is healthy, and I'll be in the workforce again very soon.
Got the breathies on as well, mate. They'll be taking
a
little bit.
Listen to this. It's unbelievable. I've got dislocated cartilage in my nose, so to have this on there, it just helps heaps. So thanks to Breathies.
Well, mate, blokes like yourself and we've taken plenty of knocks in the head, so I think that for something like Breathies would be an absolute godsend.
Yeah, I can join you on that one.
All right, guys, we've got plenty to get into today, so we're going to get stuck straight into it. First off, I just want to get each of our players for the trial. So we obviously put up on the page today, Marketo Sophie. Are we all in agreement that he was probably the player of the trials? What are we sort of thinking?
I think definitely from a highlights standard and a lot of things that he did in the game was massive. I just want to chuck a name out there also, Selwyn Cobbo. Now, I watched him very closely at Leichhardt in that first game. He would have taken anywhere from 10 to 12 yardage carries from the back end of the field, helping the team out. Then he went from left wing to right centre and still stayed involved. So I thought that was massive from him, and I'm a big believer in Selwyn Cobbo, so I'm looking forward to the year that he will have.
What about you, Sophie? Was there any other standouts?
No, I definitely agree. I'd heard some rumours that obviously Selwyn had come into preseason quite fit, and so I definitely think that's kind of showing in the trials that we've seen. As you said, on the weekend, he was super involved. But no, I definitely think our player of the week or player during the trials had an outstanding game, obviously having a couple of tries under his belt, but being so young and actually such a big winger, I think is going to have, a really good backing for him and potentially some positional changes in the future once he gets a little bit older and more developed. But for now, I think he's doing very well on that left edge.
He's killing it, and I've heard a ton of rumours that he's going to lock down that edge over a guy like Joel Skelton, who's dealing with a couple of injuries coming into the season. So Marketo Sophie, I think he's 19 years of age, absolutely killing it at the moment. The key moment for me that sort of locked him in, running over a guy like Dylan Edwards, an established fullback in our game, really, really solid defender as well out the back there at fullback, and to just run over him and Kalani going simultaneously, making his way over to the line there on the left edge, he is going to be a serious problem. Jakey, if there was a player that you had to compare Marketo Sophie to, even though he's still young, he's still raw, I guess, and only played a couple of games, who's a player comp that you think would best suit a guy like Marketo Sophie?
Mate, just off that one run, I was watching and I just thought John Olomu off the bat, just the running style, the way he knew how to use his body and his body mechanics. If you watch, Dylan Edwards actually hits him extremely clean, and he just has that really good healthy body lean straight into him. Obviously, speed and weight's gonna be a bit different for Dylan Edwards not being in triple digits as Makasini is, and he just overpowered him. So obviously John Olomu is a massive name in the world of sport. I think he's only going to go upwards and onwards, and I know it's a trial, and I know we get excited for trials, but I think if he, and this is my only opinion, if he's doing this and he's only going on the way up, they may be calling him for Origin in some capacity, I think, or even taking him to camp like they did for Katoa last year. And I think that would be outstanding for that young man if he continues to do what he's already done.
Well, look, there does seem to be a spot open at the moment because obviously Marky Mark's going to rugby union next year, and
Max is not playing at the moment.
yeah. So I do tend to think that wing spot is open. And it'll be interesting, obviously, once we get later into the year. He is still relatively young, so I'm not sure if he's a guy that's going to jump straight in there. But, I mean, Billy's made some big calls already. Robert Toya obviously only played a couple of games before he got picked. There's been a couple of guys throughout history that have had a similar sort of path. Even Payne Haas, I think in his first inaugural season, was picked in State of Origin 2 after only a couple of games. So we've definitely seen it happen before throughout a number of different positions. Sophie, I think the player comp that I guess comes to me straight away when I'm looking at Hamasi Makasini, and maybe it's a bit too early on to say it yet, he almost reminds me of a little critter. He reminds me of...
Yeah, no, he's definitely got, I guess, the similar kind of build. He's obviously quite tall, but very much long limbs as well. So great, obviously having him on the edge in terms of contesting for high balls and things like that. But as we mentioned, him running into Dylan Edwards and towering over him is a testament to, I guess, his strength as well. So yeah, I can see the resemblance there, obviously, in terms of their physique, but even I guess kind of their playing style as well. As I said, maybe there's a potential for a positional change as he kind of develops a little bit more and gets a little bit more experience under his belt. But at the moment, I definitely think he's on the right trajectory.
And you were talking, Jakey, about the running style as well, and obviously a couple guys like I want to see the ball skills. I want to see just the ball skills a little bit more, and I think we saw a little bit of it, a taste of it against the Roosters there at centre. But I tell you what, I'm very excited for the next couple of games, Hamasi Makasini, and where he sort of fits into this team. At the moment, it does seem like it's going to be that left wing next to Talon May, which, by the way, that Tigers left edge, we'll get to it, but it does look pretty scary. And if they are going to be a finals threat this year, that left edge is going to be a massive, massive part of it. Let's get into the trials, guys. Just some of the key takeaways, I guess, from a couple of the games. We won't go too deep, really. But that first one, the Dolphins taking on the Gold Coast Titans. Herbie obviously named at left centre. There was a little bit of conjecture that he was going to move edges, and Hamaso Tabuai-Fidow was going to move into the centres, Trey Fuller going into fullback. For me, looking at that, I sort of think we'll probably see Hammer stay at fullback now. Like with Herbie in left centre, I don't think they're going to play Hammer on the right side. I think people underestimate the differences defensively as well, left to right side, especially for centre. It's a massive, massive shift. So I don't think they're really going to do that to Hammer and put him on the back foot for a guy like Trey Fuller, who is still 28 years of age. Hammer's still relatively young as well. So I just don't know if they're going to be willing to take that risk. Sophie, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I thought Trey Fuller had a lot of energy from the Dolphins, obviously playing at fullback, but I definitely think Hammer probably has the shoe in, and I don't know if it was inexperience or humidity throughout the game. There was a lot of handling errors in that game as well, but I definitely thought that Trey Fuller obviously lifted the intensity and the energy when he needed to, but I also thought there was a few handling errors there that potentially could come down to a lack of experience. But yeah, I think Hammer has the shoe in for fullback.
What do you reckon, Jakey? Do you reckon Hammer or Trey Fuller for fullback? Who do you prefer?
Mate, I'm going with Hammer. And Christian Wolf, knowing Wolfie, if he says that's where Hammer will be playing, that's where he'll be playing. But you can't leave Fuller out of the team. I think even with the 2 extra squad members, it's 1-19 at the moment. I think he'll find himself in the team every week because he's got that X factor. Now, there was a try that he got the ball pretty much flat-footed in the corner, like in the 10-metre grid, and he went left foot, fan, broke a tackle. So his speed is invaluable because he's got the ability to get in between plays and he's actually got a really strong fend. Have you noticed when he actually gets through people, he's using that fend to sort of catapult himself through to the other side. So I think you got to have Hammer at fullback, in my opinion, just due to the what he already has as a player. But you do have the luxury to have Fuller on your bench. And who's to say that during the season, if there's a injury to Hamiso or they there's an injury in the centre and they do have to move the Hammer, you got Fuller to go straight into fullback for you.
Yeah, 100%. I think as well with Fuller, obviously played a couple of minutes there at centre and that, passage of play that you were talking about there, left centre, that would obviously have to make you move Herbie to the other side anyway as well, especially with Trey Fuller's left-arm carry. He'd have to be left centre. So I just don't think that you'd want to move a specialist like Herbie, who, by the way, played very, very well as well, I thought, in the 40, 50 minutes that he played. I just don't think it's worth moving around a guy like Herbie to fit Trey Fuller in your side. So I'd probably have him on the bench, like you said, Jakey, especially with the six-man bench now. I think you've got the ability to carry these guys, and if you need them in game, to throw them in. It will be interesting as well because you've obviously got a couple of injuries in the hooker position to start the year for the Dolphins as well. So they're probably going to have to carry the utility number 9, which means that Trey Fuller, it's going to be much harder for him to come into the game as that utility as well. So that's obviously going to be something to look out for. But certainly think, as you said, he's got to be in there somewhere. And I think at the moment it's going to be on the bench. But tell you what, it's great cover. And I think I want to get your thoughts on this, Jakey. When it comes to depth for the Dolphins, is it fair to say they've got the best depth across positions in the competition at the moment?
I think they do. And I hope this year that they don't really have to be tested in that area. They have been the last couple of years. So I think if you look at their team, it's so well balanced and they've got a lot of big bodies that can, move around. Like Flegger coming back this year and he's coming off the bench. I've got no doubt he'll work himself into a starting position. But to have the luxury to have an Origin and Australian representative coming off the bench is second to none. So I do agree with what you're saying. They do have depth, and that's a luxury, but I hope it doesn't get tested as it has the last couple of seasons, because I do actually look at their roster and see it as a top 5, top 4 roster.
I think the depth is pretty good. I actually think the only weak point, and so if you want to get your thoughts, is probably if Isaiah Katoa goes down, like that's big question marks as to who's going to be the guy to fill that spot, and there'd be in a lot of Barney. I think that in regards to where I'd have them this year, I'd probably have them as a top 8 side, but if they lose Isaiah Katoa, especially for an extended period, that drops significantly. What are your thoughts, Soph?
No, I definitely agree. And I thought he had an outstanding season last year. I actually had him in contention to play Origin, obviously when we had those injury doubts in the halves pairing for New South Wales. But, I guess even looking at the way that they structured their team list on the weekend, as you mentioned, with the hooker injuries, we had Brad Schneider playing 9 when typically, he was kind of in the halves when he was at Penrith. And so, I guess kind of watching him get bumped off a couple of times in the middle is probably not used to defending there. But, I guess if there's kind of injuries there pending where they're looking at playing Brad, I think that could be, a potential backup. Or if he's other halves pairing, might be able to kind of take a little bit more control if Katoa goes down. But as you mentioned, hopefully their squad doesn't take too much of a hit and they're able to kind of play their top 17 every week.
All right. Anything else on this game? Did you guys have anything in your notes you wanted to bring up for the Tigers and for the Dolphins and the Titans?
No, the Warriors. Did you talk about Warriors and Dolphins?
Oh, Warriors, Dolphins. Sorry, yeah, that was it.
Warriors, Dolphins. I thought they moved the ball really well when they actually controlled it. The game was very, very sloppy and a little bit stop-starty, but I thought once they started to get a bit of momentum and move the ball, it was actually a good game of footy to watch.
Yeah, it was. It was for sure. And you know what? Like, just talking about that game, Tanner Boyd, I think he's had a very underrated trial period. Like his game, just the little subtleties, and obviously there's a couple of injuries. Tamari Martin's broken his leg. Shinalaris Tavita's in a little bit of doubt as well to start the season. And then obviously Luke Metcalf's not going to be back until, I think, round 10, 11, 12. So having a guy like Tanner Boyd, who played the back end of last year, but is also just has enough experience now where he can just slot straight in and he can do the fundamentals right and have a 7 out of 10 every single week. I think it's such a luxury to have. What are your thoughts, Soph?
No, I definitely agree. I had in my notes here that, I thought Tanner Boyd had the kicking to a T. He was putting it in that bottom right corner for Cobbo from the 50 metre on the dot every single time. And obviously that, I think, contributed to Cobbo's, I guess, high carry count. But I believe it was probably intentional to get him, I guess, kind of limited in his yardage carries. Hopefully tucking him away in the corner, and I guess kind of, as I mentioned, not being able to have him come off the ruck and get some space away. But yeah, I definitely thought, as you mentioned, that he had some nice subtleties, and he looked like he was really in control of the team, which was nice to see. Obviously, after kind of playing most of the last season in reserve grade.
100%. I really hope that he has a big year this year. And I also think as well, like that 5'8" position isn't necessarily locked in for Chanel either. Like Chanel had a great year and I've been very high on him. But I also think, especially with the way that Luke Metcalf plays, he can play quite explosively off the cuff. He's a really nice running game. I think that 5'8" jersey's up for grabs for a guy like Tanner Boyd, who is a little bit more structured, to come in there, have a bit more structure, implement a bit more just that structure into the game, and then let Luke Metcalf capitalise on that running and move into a bit more of a traditional 6 role, but more so running down that left-hand side. I think it could work really nicely for the Wars. Jakey, I want to get your thoughts on Tanner Stowers-Smith, the number 8 there for the Wars. I thought he was great. That opening 15, 20 minutes, the number 8 there for the Warriors. He is a guy that I think, he was in the 17 last year, but I thought he was unreal, and I think he's going to be a bit of a breakout player for them.
Yeah, he laid a good platform for him. He went forward. I think he had 1 or 2 half decent offloads as well. So I think he's he may be pushing for a starting spot this year. You know what I mean? That's what the trials are there for these blokes that have got anywhere between 10 to 30 games of first grade, or coming, trying to work themselves into that 1 to 17 or 1 to 19 now in the NRL. So I think it's only upwards and upwards for him. And who knows, mate? He may use these trial matches to get himself in that number 8 or number 10 jersey.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see for sure. We'll move on to the next game, which was the Tigers and the Panthers. The Tigers got the win there, 26-12. Really, really promising sides for some of the younger guys from the Tigers. We've obviously already spoken about young Hamasi Makasini, who's going to be definitely a guy to watch this year. Had 160 metres in this one, 7 tackle bus, absolute weapon. But even someone like Taylor May, I thought that he was great as well. Obviously, Hamasi Makasini capitalised on those half opportunities, but Taylor May was unbelievable as well. Made some really nice breaks. A lot of those tries for Hamasi Makasini were off a really good break there from Taylor May, where he was able to get the pass, drawing those defenders. So I think that, we talk about the left edge. We sort of spoke about it before, the left edge there for the West Tigers. So they're looking pretty good. Your former side, they're looking pretty good, the West Tigers.
Yeah, they've definitely done some, I guess, kind of successful recruiting over the last few years, and obviously having some consistency in their coaching staff with Benji is helping. Obviously they've had some slight improvements in terms of their position on the ladder, but I definitely see them kind of pushing for finals this season. And, I guess kind of speaking about that left edge with Luai, and I guess kind of, as you mentioned, all of their outside backs having some striking form on the weekend. But I actually thought Dewey saved them a fair bit on the weekend with his long kicking game. He was putting it in the bottom corners, even in their own half, and having, I guess, an experienced player like himself with such a big boot is, I guess, super important for, I guess, the teams like the Tigers, which are obviously quite young, and there are a lot of up and coming players. So having kind of an older, more, I guess, kind of controlled halfback, and then you give, I guess, Luai a little bit more of that space to kind of play off the cuff as well. But no, I definitely thought that his kicking game was really good, bar, the first 1 or 2 that didn't land as well as you'd hoped. But after that, they were in their own half and he was just put it in the bottom corner.
Yeah, his kicking game is unbelievable. I think it's the thing that's really Benji's been enticed by to throw him in that number 7 role. Has just been his ability to get them out of trouble. He's got a little bit of structure about him as well. He's got a bit of experience playing the halves, but I think it's more so just the fact that those last tackle thing, it's not going to be always reliant on Jerome Luai. And I feel like a couple of times throughout last year when Latu got a couple of opportunities, he was great, but when it came to getting them out of last tackle, his kicking game wasn't as strong, and Luai had to sort of take over a little bit as well, and it sort of pulled Luai away from being that number 6 that's so good down that left-hand side, very explosive, very off the cuff, takes those half chances. He sort of stepped back a little bit and took on a little bit more of a halfback road, and while it was good for Latufanu, because Latufanu got to play some good footy and play a bit more explosive, a guy like Jerome Luai suffered. So I feel like Dewey, I wouldn't say he's the perfect guy to complement Adam Dewey, a perfect guy to complement Jerome Luai, but I feel like Adam Doueihi is a really good stand-in until they find someone else that comes through and stands out in the roster. What are your thoughts, Jakey?
He's a bit of an Iceman, Dewey. Like you look, if you watch him when he has been involved in the Tigers in the halves, they've gone to him for drop goals. He's kicked a couple of penalty goals and goals after tries that have actually got him into front or got him level back in the game. And just to mention what you were saying before, so if his kicking game, it's a little bit like Mitch Moses. Like if you're coming off your yardage line and you're only 35 to 40 out, you know that he's going to at least reach the try line if he feels like giving it a good punt. So that, those sorts of skill sets and, the Tigers with their eagerness and their energy with kick chase, that can swing a whole, 5 to 10 minute period for a team, especially the Tigers with Dewey kicking those long balls. And I actually do think they complement each other quite well. I was watching Luai on the weekend. He didn't really come too far to the other side, so I think he's got a bit more confidence in Dewey and doesn't really need to worry about him, I suppose, with what he's trying to do. And Dewey just sort of glides. And the best thing about Dewey, he takes the line on. He actually has him second guessing, and he's got that big body that can get in between peoples and drag them for a couple of meters. So I hope they both stay fit because I think that 6 and 7 combination has the potential to do something for the Tigers.
It does, doesn't it? I think, as you sort of said, they did sort of complement each other quite well on the weekend with attacking sets. And Jerome Luai, as I said, just taking that pressure off a guy like Jerome Luai is exactly what they need. That left edge, though, as well, Talon May we spoke about, Samuel Afani, who I thought had a really nice game. I tell you what, in terms of laying a platform, and the thing I love the most about the Tigers is they've got a really nice young crop of forwards that are just aggressive, and they've got such a large tank, they can just go for days. A guy like Fanua Pole, for example, played some big minutes in this trial, 157 run meters from 12 carries. He had 61 post contact, 2 tackle busts, 17 tackles without a miss. Just the hunger, desperation, going after the contest, and to do that in a couple of minutes in a trial is just outstanding. And it sends a really good message to a guy like Benji who's trying to put this forward pack together and pick guys that are going to want to play for the jersey. What were your thoughts on Big Fanua Pole, Jakey?
He plays with confidence. And I think he's starting to take a little bit more. Obviously, Terrell May didn't play. So maybe he took the ownership to sort of stand up a little bit and lead. As you're saying, 156 metres, that's a lot of metres off 12 carries. That's over 10 metres a carry. So it's good to see those types of players take, their skill set and up it a little bit when one of their, more high profile players, spit it out, Jake, high profile players are out. So that's the sort of stuff I like to see is when, those younger guys or the guys that are sort of the second punch for the other players coming on and being that first punch for them. So it's good.
It's good. You got guys like Fanua Pole who had that amazing game, but so if they've also got guys like Kit Lilly, who I think in this trial period has been outstanding, just with the little platform that he's been able to lay. And he's had a couple of games throughout the trials where he's started. Guys like Bunty Afoa, a bit more experience that they got over from the Warriors, very, very good. They had a young bloke, Charlie Murray, that came on at lock and was just unbelievable defensively. The young crop of forwards that Benji's got to play with here, it suits their side if they want to be an attacking outfit this year, doesn't it, Soph?
Yeah, I definitely thought, you read my mind there with Bunty and even having, I guess, kind of players like Alex Twal and a couple of, other players like Seyfarth and so forward, although they're probably not the most experienced. You've got players like Bunty, who's obviously a Samoan international, so he's got quite an experience there. But as you mentioned, yeah, those young players coming through are setting a very good platform for the rest of the team, despite obviously being, in their early stages of their career. So I definitely think that if they're able to kind of capitalize on that and say, relatively injury free with those good starts, they're able to kind of set the rest of their team up to kind of drown other teams out towards the end of each half.
All right. Anything else on this game, guys, before we get into one of our first fan questions here?
I'm good, mate.
All right.
I just wanted to quickly talk about Nathan Cleary getting cleared today, announced that he got cleared from the 2-week suspension for that head high tackle. What were your guys' thoughts on the sin bin?
How much time do you have? That, mate, I don't want to harp on it. I'm so happy he got off, but mate, the NRL should be apologising to the Cleary family for having to drive out to the SCG. It's just there's a difference between a high tackle and whiplash. Makasini was taking the hit up, dropped the ball, was juggling it, wasn't actually, braced for the tackle. Nathan hit him shoulder to shoulder. And you know what I mean? Like, I get the way they want to play the game. Penalty go for 10. There doesn't need to be a report and like 55 million headlines for the next 48 hours for him, potentially not playing round one in the NRL competition against the Broncos. Like, seriously.
I'll
Yeah,
tell you
I
what,
also loved that it was a halfback making a shot too. Obviously, we saw him shoot out of the line and put
Yeah.
it on, which is normally, halfbacks aren't always renowned for their defense, but I kind of liked seeing a halfback, take on one of the big backs.
it is good that he got off, and especially with the draw that the Panthers have as well, the fact they've got Broncos straight up, but then they have a really harsh draw after that. It's good for the Panthers that they at least have Cleary in there. I'll tell you what, it was a headache for us super coaches trying to put our teams together. We had to take Cleary out, put him straight back in. It's been a crazy 48 hours. But SCG, not a bad part of Sydney, Jakey. So I don't think it would have been too much of a drama for the Cleary family. Could have gone to Coogee for a swim.
Yeah, possibly after it.
I want to get into our first fan question here from Magpies 1908. They ask which non-top 8 side in 2025 will be the biggest improver in 2026, and the reason I want to ask it in and around the Tigers is because I actually think that the Tigers are a really good shout here. What are your thoughts, Jakey?
Yeah, it's the Tigers. The Dolphins didn't make the 8 either, did they?
No.
They were on the outside. So
They were not.
I think they're my two that can get in there definitely. I think I actually had them when we did our podcast on who our top 8 were. They were both in there. And it's like anything for any club and team. If they stay healthy, I think they can rise to finals. Yeah.
What about you, Soph?
I definitely think that the Tigers are up there, and as we spoke about, if Dolphins can stay healthy. But after the weekend, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I thought Parramatta actually played, quite well and scored quite a few points once a lot of their experienced players had come off. Obviously, Storm have had, I guess, questionable verdicts in their previous few years during the trials, but always come out to finish top 4. So I don't want to knock them down too soon. But I definitely thought that, Parramatta did well with a lot of their experienced players coming off early to score so many points against such a, I guess, kind of experienced team.
Yeah, we're talking about depth for sides as well. Like, tell you what, the Parramatta Eels, their depth is nice as well. They've got some really good young players coming through, but also just what, as you said, that young Parramatta Eels side was able to do to the Roosters, even when a couple of the first grade guys were still on the field. It was really, really impressive. So we'll talk about that game in just a second, but very, very impressive from Parra in that second half. A question just for you, Sophie, in here from the same guy, Magpies 1908. It says, was the biggest threat to the Roosters and the Broncos in the NRLW? What are your thoughts?
I think so. I think they'll be up there. As I mentioned in our previous post, they were my smoky for the finals, and they were close in the last season in 2025, just missing out on the finals. But they've done some good recruiting over the off season, and hopefully with some girls kind of coming home or going home, and kind of connecting to their culture and being around family and friends more consistently will hopefully lead to as a more successful season. But they've got some big names that have gone there. They've got Melee from Brisbane. They got Gale, obviously also from Brisbane. So I guess kind of the Broncos are losing a few players despite getting Southwell going up there. And, Roosters are always stacked. So I definitely think that the Warriors will be pushing for the top 4 spot. Whether or not they can knock out either the Roosters or the Brisbane will be another story, but I definitely think they'll be pushing for it.
Tell you what, speaking about your post, there was a bit of controversy around it, wasn't there?
Read the comments. It was NRLW, and everyone's like, the doggies aren't going to come last. I'm like, I know that. If you read the post, it was NRLW.
Oh well. People will have to figure out how to read a pinned comment sooner or later.
Exactly.
We'll move to the next game, guys. Let's get stuck in. It was the Sharkies in Canberra. Not too much to touch on here. It was an absolute dusting. Canberra obviously not naming a few of their guys. There was a few standouts there, which we'll touch on for Canberra, but I think the main takeaway for me on this one, Hines and Trindle. Jakey, Hines and Trindle look good.
They do, mate. And I think they were probably the two best halves, obviously, but the halves pairing over the weekend. They look like they played, I suppose, how they've been training. They've taken what they've sort of done in the preseason, whereas I've watched other halves, just to name one, Moses and Pezzett, they looked like they were really, really content with each other in patches of the game when they were both out there. but they just sort of weren't gelling as well as I thought. Obviously, I think they'll be waiting till the season starts for that sort of stuff. But if you're going off form over over the weekend, I think they were the halves pairing of the weekend, and I think if they can take that into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds, that'll put the Sharks ahead of everyone. And they've got the potential to do that. And they keep saying, we don't want it, we want to go one step further. We've made the prelims a couple of years in a row now, and we've been knocked out. When your halves are saying follow us, that's an intimidating thing, I think, for other teams to have a look at.
100% it is. And, you're talking about halves that gelled well. I think we'll talk about it obviously later. I think it's the next game with the Roosters. But even Sam Walker and DCE, not so much at the start of the game because they were trying to get used to each other. DCE threw a really weird inside ball back into Sam Walker, which he dropped. But I tell you what, definitely Hines and Trindle. And the fact that they even had, I guess, almost an extra trial in the Indigenous All-Stars game the previous week. They've just had so much time to get used to each other now, and you'd hope it's the third year they've been together as a halves pairing. You'd really hope things start to click because they haven't been like a Melbourne Storm who have had to adjust on the fly. Because you remember with Melbourne, Munster's been out for half the year with injuries, and Hughes is always out with injuries, and Harry Grant's always out with injuries. So that spine hasn't really had opportunities to gel fully. And they look great with each other at the moment, but they actually haven't had a stack of games. I think I saw a stat the other day. The Melbourne halves haven't had 10 games in a row together, and they've been with each other for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. So it's just unbelievable how they've been so successful. But certainly Hines and Trindle, to your point, Jakey, I think are definitely the mentions there. Other guys that I had listed down here, I thought that Kale Iro looked good. Really liked what I saw from Kale Iro there at centre. Billy Burns, tell you what, Billy Burns' last 18 months has been really, really good. I think that he's sort of really tried to push for first grade and come in for a spot. Teague Wilton's got an injury. So I think that Billy Burns will be the left back role for the Sharks to start the year. So what were your thoughts on him?
Yeah, no, as you said, I'm pretty sure he's been kind of riddled with injuries over the last couple of years as well. And so he's had to really fight to earn a consistent spot in first grade. But, if he's able to kind of make a really good partnership and pairing with his half, and, whether that's he stays on the same edge the whole season or has to switch between the two. But, if he can consistently put out good performances and if his halves are doing what they should be doing and leading the team around each week, I definitely think that he'll be able to kind of keep that spot there and keep up a good performance if his halves are able to kind of keep that partnership going really well.
And Jakey, he's got a real point of difference as well to Britton Nikora, who's more of a straight, hard line runner. Billy Burns is a bit of an offload. He's got something else to his game as well. So what are your thoughts on Billy Burns, Jake?
He's got a really nice line and offload. He's one of those players, mate, that whichever club he's sort of gone to, there's always been those two back rows in front of him. But when he's got his opportunity, it's like he's played 200 games. He's full of enthusiasm. He does whatever the team needs for him. Those are the type of players that the boys, I've got no doubt, are going to be around going, mate, we need him in the team. How are we going to put him in the team? You know what I mean? So I think if he can, stay fit, the opportunities will come thick and fast for him this year.
I think it was 3 or 4 years ago when Billy Burns was over at the Dragons. Do you remember? There was the back end of the season. I think that they were no chance at making the 8. So they were just giving a couple of young guys a crack. Yeah. Billy Burns came in. I think he played a couple of games at even centre and then in the back row. And he just carved. And I've been a huge fan of him since then. So I'm a huge fan of Billy Burns. And I think that he's going to have a big year. I'm not sure how old he is. He'd probably be a little bit older now as well, Billy Burns. But I'm a huge fan of him, and I think that he'll go extremely well this year. I think that T. Wilton's under a little bit of Jerry Mesher to obviously keep his spot. 27 years of age, Billy Burns. So definitely.
Still heaps to go to spring chicken.
Heaps of time. Hoepa Puru as well, the 13. I thought for the Sharks he was very solid, and he's been a guy that's been in the All-Stars teams and whatnot over the past couple of years, and he's had a couple of opportunities. He played number 18, in this game. It was jersey number 18. I thought that he was great as well. Came on, plenty of energy, as we were sort of talking about with Billy Burns. He's very young. His brother's the halfback, the backup halfback there at Cronulla as well, Nawai But Hoepa is the lock forward there. Had 151 metres off only 10 carries. 27 post contact, 3 line breaks, 7 tackle busts. And then he had 12 tackles as well and scored a try. He was unreal. Did you watch him closely there, Jakey?
Not as closely as you did with those healthy stats you just put out there. That's a good stat line. It shows eagerness, and I think that's the best thing about the Sharks is I think as we were saying before with the Dolphins, they've got that depth. Like he was number 18 on the weekend, so he's on the cusp of the 1 to 17. To put up those numbers, he's pretty much putting his hand up saying, "Mate, I want to be there round one." So, these sorts of as I said, these trials, they're just not for team gelling together. It's for these younger blokes to put their hands up and try and shake themselves into the team.
Exactly. I do want to touch on the Raiders just a little bit. Obviously, a tough day out, 48-6. Even in the second half, when the reserve grade side for the Sharkies came on, they just weren't able to take a trick a little bit there. The Canberra Raiders were getting rolled a little bit through the middle, and the Sharks just came out in that second half with a ton of enthusiasm. But I really liked Joe Roddy. Doesn't have as impressive of a stat line as a Hoa Papuru, but the number 23 there for the Canberra Raiders had 42 metres, only the 1 tackle bust, but 24 tackles. So he got through plenty of work defensively in only 20 minutes odd playing. But over the last couple of weeks, he's sort of reminded me a little bit of a Cam Murray. He's a bit of a smaller lock forward, really good defensively, aims up, and then as well, he's got a little bit of a passing game there through the middle. But he does seem, at the same time, just the way that he runs the footy and a few of the inner details as well, the way he plays the game, he's pretty old school as well. So I think that he's a guy that, Ricky Stewart just loves those tough buggers that can just get through a ton of minutes there through the middle and aim up defensively. He'll be a guy that I see coming in at a stage there for Canberra. Guys, anyone that stood out for you, Soph, we'll start with you. Anyone for Canberra that you sort of liked in this game?
No, I definitely kind of agree with your comments about, the smaller lock forward. I think obviously Ricky seems to be a bit of a hard ass, but he loves kind of, your straight and narrow, hard working middles. And so, if we can get some speed around the ruck with him being that little bit smaller, and as you mentioned, having that, I guess, kind of three-dimensional game with his ball playing abilities as well as really strong defensive efforts. Even if he comes on, the back end of each half to kind of give the more experienced middles a breather, hopefully that can kind of add to their ball playing, having lost their key half this season to Manly. But, I think he probably, was one being, I guess, kind of a lock hooker myself. It was nice to see a little bit of change in there.
Yeah, for sure. Jakey, anyone else that you want to talk about for the Raiders, or should we leave them in the dust like the Sharks did?
No, leave them in the dust, mate. I think they're just looking forward to round one.
The Chookies and the Eels. This was definitely the game that I was the most excited to watch, just because you've got obviously Moses and Pezzett, and then DC and Sam Walker, who are the halves pairings that I've sort of wanted to see how it works. I wanted to see if DCE was able to take that backward seat. I wanted to see if the two halfbacks there, and Jonah and Mitch Moses, were able to complement each other, and both did pretty much. They both looked really, really good. Definitely the notes from this game, especially that first half for the Roosters. I thought they were clinical there. Sam Walker looks like he's put on about 5 kilos. He looks a little bit bigger, but he just looks ultra confident. And the fact that DCE was able to take that backwards seat, Jakey, I want to get your thoughts. Sam Walker looks very, very good, and he looks like he's in for a huge season.
I agree. I actually thought Cherry Evans maybe took too much of a backward seat, to be honest, and let sort of Sam Walker dominate the game a little bit more. We spoke about it when we were watching the game, how we just counted, like the Roosters are so clinical to know to get Moses in that tackle, caught at the marker. They go down the short side. He just goes directly into that front row that was caught on the short side, bring him all the way up, and they just play short. It's just so clinical. And for Walker's going into his 3rd or 4th season,
Yep.
these are things that people don't usually pick up until they're like 6, 7, 8 years into first grade. So it shows you, A, how good he is at doing what he does. He's got Cherry Evans there, but then also Trent Roberts is obviously giving him free rein and giving him a lot of information on how he wants them to direct the team this year. I think the best thing they can do is just play their own individual games. And I know it's very cliche, but I think they're actually going to be very formidable if Daly can get 50% of the ball in his hands also. Like, I think everyone's sort of forgotten maybe who Taylor Cherry Evans is, and I know it's Sam Walker's team in that, but when you want to have a halves partner that you can rely on as a young fella, you want Daly as that person.
Do you tend to agree, Soph?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if we look at this year's career, he's been playing, I guess, Origin for nearly a decade, potentially longer. And, he's had consistent performances every single season for so long. And so, although he's played his entire tenure at Manly up until this season, I definitely think that Walker looked like he was leading the team on the weekend. And as you mentioned, that lovely short ball to Crichton on the left side there for the try. And even his 20-40 was impressive. But yeah, I thought DC had a little bit of a clunky start. We mentioned that inside ball earlier on, which just seemed like a little bit of a miscommunication. And obviously with the trial, that stuff is better to get out now than in the season going into round one. But I definitely think that there's room for him to kind of be a little bit more involved, particularly obviously with the players he's got around him. But I wanted to make a quick mention for the Roosters bench. How crazy. It was probably 20 minutes into the first half, and you've got Connor Watson and Spencer Leniu coming on, and you're just in awe to think that they're coming off the bench. Like that's an insane squad, and they had players like Victor Radley who weren't even eligible to play. Their team is insane, and obviously, as we've said, the halves pairing, a very experienced half in DCE, and then a young, exciting half in Sam Walker is I guess kind of a great opportunity to have some fun playing footy this season.
It's funny, we spoke about the Dolphins first for depth, and I think we've pretty much spoken about depth for every other team afterwards.
Every team.
As well. So it's really exciting, and how even the competition is, and the depth of rosters for a couple of sides now as they build as well. It is really exciting. The guy that I want to give a mention to here, and I tell you what, this is probably my second best moment of the round. Reece Robson got interviewed during the break when obviously they had the lightning warning. And he said, on last tackle, who are you passing to? Are you going to pass to Sam Walker or are you going to pass to DCE? And he says, I don't know. I'll probably go myself. Then Benai Uelu, the first touch he gets of the ball at 9, he puts a kick up and they get a try off the back of it. And he did that twice throughout the game. How crazy is it to have a guy like Benai Uelu? Reece Robinson's obviously going to be out for the first month or so. Benai Uelu slots straight in and he sets off 2 tries off kicks on last tackle. Just goes himself and backs himself there. Jakey, what are your thoughts?
It shows confidence, and again, taking his opportunity. There's no doubt Reece Robson's going to be the 9 there at the Chooks for the next 4 seasons he's signed there. Unlucky break hurt in his thumb, but I think he'll be pushing, they're saying 8 weeks. I think he'll be back after 5 or 6. So it gives this young fella now the opportunity to start the season with the Roosters. And he may lock himself into a bench role because I'd imagine if he's playing well, Reece Robson coming back from the thumb, he's not going to pick the speed of the game up as quickly. He may just be that 50, 60-minute player for 1 or 2 rounds till he gets his fitness back because rugby league's got a funny way of rewarding hard work.
100%. And it's funny you say that as well because the way that the Roosters have named their front row and then into their bench is very interesting. Now, I thought, particularly with Radley out to start the year, that Connor Watson was going to be the starting 13. They went with him at 14 and they had Blake Steep starting there at 13. So I almost think that they've backtracked on the Radley into the back row thing and Radley's going to be that 13. I think Connor Watson will be your utility and he'll play a bit of 9 off the bench. I think it's going to be super interesting, especially when Radley comes back, especially if Benai Uelu kills it in the opening weeks. If they have to backtrack again, move Watson back into 13 and move Radley then back onto the edge, like how that they're going to put all the pieces together there, it's going to be very, very interesting. So if you're putting it together now, let's say everyone's back in the side, what are we thinking for 13 to, I guess, the 19 jersey on the bench?
Oh, not all the way sure, all the way up to 19. I'll probably go to 17 just because it's strange having to think of that many players to go on the bench, but it's so hard. You obviously, if Radley's back, I'd say he'll probably end up in the starting team, probably on that edge. Connor Watson will probably end up playing. I think he'll be the 14. Obviously he can kind of jump in anywhere that you really need him to. So if Reece Robson is playing, eventually the whole 80 minutes, you'll have him there. He can jump in at hooker if need be, at lock. He can even jump in, in the halves if, one of the 2 halves go down. So I would have him at 14. You've obviously got Spencer Leniu on there as one of the props. Who else? would you have on the bench? If Radley's in second row, you obviously mentioned the lock already. Um,
Yeah, you got Blake Steep. There's also
yeah,
they've got crazy depth. Nat
yeah.
Butcher, Egan Butcher, Siwa Wong, Celeste
I know
Fiketti.
the Butchers were in and out of the season, the top grade last season. So it'd be interesting to see if they can kind of cement themselves back into the top squad. Particularly, I think the year before they were playing consistent footy week in and week out. So it'd be nice to see them both back in the top squad week in to week out. So you'd potentially have them on the bench as well as your other middles, knowing that they can kind of play on the edge or that lock prop role.
What about you, Jakey? How are you putting it all together?
I think it's more what type of style they want to play. I think they'll have a bigger pack. So I think they'll put Radley at 13 maybe. They just go a little bit more direct, obviously, with, Lenu and White that are there, those two bigger bodies, also Collins. But if you want to move the ball early in the game, you'd almost think Watson has to come into 13. They'll have to reshuffle for him. But as I said, it's a bit of a jigsaw puzzle there for them. I think it's whatever sort of pack they're coming up against. If it's a bit of a bigger pack, if it's a team that likes to move the ball, if they want a little bit more mobility out in the field and defence. So they've got that luxury. So I think it sort of comes down to how they want to play and also who they're playing against.
It will be very interesting to see how that side gets put together, and we'll find out, obviously, in their opening couple of rounds. Any other standouts for the Roosters, guys?
No, not for me.
We'll move on then to Parramatta. I know that we were speaking about Pezzett and Moses before as one of the halves pairings that were very comfortable together. I thought so too. I thought they looked very, very good. I even thought when that Lorenzo Talatena, the young bloke, came on, the number 26, he was electric. And I tell you what, they've got a plan, obviously, to bring him in as the 6 next year when Pezzett goes to the Broncos for 27. I almost think I'll tell you what, he's very close to ready. And I think what they're doing this year with Pezzett, I have more and more confidence in it now for them to move Pezzett on and to bring this young kid in than I say maybe did 2 weeks ago. What about you, Jakey?
He was chomping at the bit, wasn't he? It was good to watch. And when you see Pezzett and Moses, I think as it goes into the season, I think we're just going to see a real ball dominant Mitch Moses. I think Pezzett's going to be really in the background, because he's only there for a year. And if I was Mitch Moses, I'm thinking and, sort of thinking my footy head and, who Mitch Moses is as a footy player, it's still his team, mate. So I'm going to take full control. You can get it when I feel that you maybe need to get it. And when we do need to play together, let's be clutch and be very smooth. But I still think Mitch Moses is going to get the ball 70-80% of the time. And Pezzett will just sort of be there, lending a hand. Or, if he does see something, he can use his overriding call. And then, as you said before, that young fella that come on and set up a couple of tries, who's potentially going to be the 6 moving forward. I'll tell you what, if there's an injury, you think he'll go straight in there.
Yeah, for sure. They've again, we're going to talk about the magic word depth. The Eels have certainly got it, and I almost think that they've got a similar sort of debate here for the bench, like their bench in terms of forwards too. So if I'll get your thoughts, they've obviously got that young Sam Tuivati, who's an absolute energy ball there. They've got Matt Doorey, who's had an outstanding trial period. They've got Charlie Geimer, who I'm a big fan of there as well, who played a bit of back row, key standout game against the Canberra Raiders towards the back end of the season. They've got young Jordan Samrani, who can play a couple of different positions as well, who they might try and fit in. Like, in regards to positions on the bench there for Parramatta, again, talking to your point, Jakey, about the direction that they want to go in as well, because they've got Talon De Silva and Dylan Walker as 2 utilities currently. So what are your thoughts? Who sort of impressed you the most out of the young crop of forwards, that played for Parramatta?
I have a distinct memory from the game of Dylan Walker. He was fresh, he'd just come on, he'd go into lock and hit one of the props with a nice short ball, running the lead line, which put Mitchell Moses back on the inside underneath the post. And I thought that was such a lovely touch. And, obviously he's quite experienced as well. So having him available on the bench to kind of play that middle forward role if you need, and then Talon De Silva to potentially come on and replace Riley Smith. But I think, Walker should be predominantly in that lock role, and then Talon would come on as a 9. But I thought that Riley Smith played big minutes last season, so it'll be interesting to see how Talon kind of folds into the squad and the interchanges, knowing that he obviously came late last season from the Tigers.
I'll tell you what, I actually disagree. I think that they can afford, just with the side that they've got this year, to probably have both coming off the bench, both Talon and Dill Walker, because I just feel like Dylan Walker's impact that he has on coming off the bench, you're exactly right. He comes in that lock forward position. He squares everything up. He almost plays like that second number 7. Really nice short balls deep into the line. But he's also got enough size on his body now where he can handle it, taking a couple of carries himself, obviously defensively as well. I feel like off the bench, he's just too valuable with the impact that he has. Whereas they've got guys like Jack DeBellin as well, who they've got there this year. They've got a couple of other guys who are a bit more beefy in their pack to go into that 13 jersey that can do a serviceable job with their ball playing through the middle until a guy like Dylan Walker enters the fray. Jakey, what are your thoughts on a couple of the young crop of players and even a guy like Dylan Walker in this one?
Well, the luxury of Dylan Walker, he's probably, he's the Connor Watson for Parramatta. He can actually, depending on how DeBellin's playing, they could actually swap and have Dylan Walker start at 13 and just have their 10 and 8, their two bigger bodies, laying the platform a little bit. And Dylan Walker can start dropping them under and moving the ball a little bit more. And then you can have DeBellin come off the bench and add that punch while still being able to ball play and obviously really solid in defense. I personally think Parramatta have the potential to be the best attacking team in the comp this year. I see them as a team that's going to be really, really disciplined in defense, but I feel they're going to move the ball the most. And I think they've got the actual strike power to be able to do it, which is going to be interesting to see because I just see that they've got this well structured sort of defense now where Jason Riles has probably implemented a couple of things from the Melbourne Storm for him, and they've just got Moses and Pezzett there, the bigger bodies, and they've got their middle third. It isn't necessarily the power game all the time. All these blokes have an offload and can ball play. So I think Parramatta have the potential to be the best attacking team in the competition.
I'll tell you what, they'll certainly be up there this year for offloads again. They were the top side for offloads last year. They'll definitely be in and around that circle again. Boy, I do want to touch on a guy that I've sort of hinted at a couple of times, but when they were at the media day, when all the players were at the media day, and I think it was probably Rugby League Guru, went up to Mitch Moses and he said, who's the guy that's really stood out and is going to have the biggest season this year for the Parramatta Eels? And Mitch Moses said Matt Doorey, the young number 16 there that came off the bench. He's been in the dog system. I think he's been around a couple of different systems there. He'd probably be around 24, 25 years of age. Had 84 metres off seven carries. Line break, 3 tackle bust. He was very, very good. And then the young Sam Tuivaiti there, the number 15. 12 carries, 129 metres, 4 tackle bust, 13 tackles. I just think the young forwards that they've got there are just carrying a ton of enthusiasm. And we're talking about Para as one of the better attacking teams in this competition. When you've got young forwards with plenty of enthusiasm who can ball play, have an offload, and are just hungry with a big motor, it just gives, especially the halfbacks and that need the momentum, it just gives them the absolute platform to create and play their best footy. Guys like Iongi as well at the back there at fullback, who I think's had a really, really good trial. Probably a little bit on the back foot against the Roosters at stages, but I certainly think throughout the entire trial period, he's definitely been a guy that stood out for Parramatta. But the young crop of forwards for me has been the biggest standout. And as you said, Jakey, if they are going to be the biggest or best attacking side in the competition, having those young, hungry forwards there is going to be great, and just the forward pack that they're building. And I guess the question I want to ask you the most about Parramatta, Jakey, is Jason Riles and his influence on Junior Paulo. Because before Jason Riles, Junior Paulo, his output wasn't really great. Regan Campbell-Gillard was on the fence whether he was going to stay, whether he was going to go. There was a little bit of drama in and around the middle there. And Jason Riles walks in, and Junior Paulo's had, I guess, his 2 career best seasons, I guess, to date, especially later on in his career. What are your thoughts on Junior Paulo coming into this year?
Well, Junior Paulo's got Jason Riles there, right, as we've just spoken about. I think a lot of people forget Jason Riles was actually the best front row in the world for probably 3 or 4 seasons back in his playing day. Jason Riles was pretty much that first big, tall, 6'5" front row I don't think he ever got put on his back. Offload, very mobile defensively, was playing for Origin in Australia, was just a mainstay in all these rep arenas. Now, I got no doubt he, as in Rolsey, had seen something in Paulo and thought, you know what? I need him here. He's the guy that's going to, when he talks, he listens, like everybody else is going to listen, and he leads from the front, I've got no doubt they've probably had a conversation. And what I think Riles may have done and just said, hey, mate, you're going to be wearing the 10. It's your job. If you either hold on to the 10 or you lose it, go out and show us what you've made of, sort of thing, at this back end part of the year. And I think that's all he's really done. I don't think Paulo's one of those guys you need to motivate to an extent, but I think a front rower like that, it's more or less challenging him to sort of squeeze the lemon a little bit more. And I think that's sort of what's happened. And I hope the big fella has a massive season.
All right, guys. Anything else on this game before we move on to the next one? All right, sweet. Storm and Titans again, but probably in the opposite way to what we thought. A team getting left a little bit in the dust here in the Melbourne Storm, 42-12, the final scoreline. The Titans putting on an absolute clinic, and we're talking about some of the better attacking sides in the competition. Titans are my smoky. Watching them, especially if they can get these halves right with Jaden Campbell and AJ, they reek of attack, don't they, Soph?
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't get to watch much of the game, but to see the scoreboard blowout like that, I realized I mentioned Storm earlier instead of the Roosters, but yeah, to see Storm kind of lose like that to a team that has been, not that successful over the last few seasons, despite it being a trial, was very, very surprising. But I mean, great success leading into the beginning of the season for the Titans, and hopefully they can have a better season than they have. But even kind of getting, the halfback from Dragons going up as well to add a little bit more I guess, versatility in terms of their spine and who they can have there. Obviously, Jaden Campbell and AJ Brimson having previously been, fullbacks and kind of switching between different positions in the spine. It'll give them a little bit more flexibility there. So, very exciting to see what they, I guess, kind of can put up in the first few rounds of the season.
Jakey, I guess, especially myself, a lot of people have the Titans at the bottom end of the ladder. What's the Titans' ceiling this year based on what we've seen from them so far? I know it's only a trial and we don't take too much out of trials, but just the opening exchanges of this one and what we saw from the starting side, what do we expect their ceiling to be this season?
I don't see them making the 8, but I see them worrying teams that'll be inside the 8. I think with the Titans, if they can, as a group, keep these fellas together for 3 or 4 seasons, that's when they'll start reaping the rewards a little bit. At the moment, it looks like everything's still a little bit fresh. And if we're going to be serious, to Melbourne Storm standard, they just didn't turn up on the weekend. They were, glimpses of Melbourne Storm, in-season game. But there was like a couple of the bigger names missing tackles, missing their roles. They looked a little bit disjointed and frustrated. It looked like maybe, they got inside their own heads a little bit and just expected to blow the Titans off the park. And obviously the Titans turned up and maybe did a little bit of Melbourne Storm on the Melbourne Storm in some capacity. So with the Titans, their ceiling's not finals. Again, I'm more than happy to say I'm wrong if they do make the 8. But I think they will be very competitive and more so competitive than what they have been in previous years.
Yeah, it's not often you see Melbourne Storm with 40 missed tackles and then a 77% completion rate when they've got most of their first grade side in there.
Massively.
So it's very, very worrying. Soph, what are your thoughts on Melbourne?
As we know, Melbourne are always a competitive team and always pushing for the top 4 positions, regardless of what season it is. And I don't think that'll change despite the poor performance in the trial. I'm sure Bellyache has ripped him a new one, after the game and at half time and then, leading into the prep this week and going into round 1. But, as we said, we don't want to take too much from the trials, but I think that was kind of a bit of a reality check not to get too complacent. So hopefully coming back into round 1, they're the disciplined, high-performing robots that we know that they can be.
Look, I'll tell you what, some positives when we're talking about Melbourne here. I thought Stefano was good in the opening exchanges. I thought that he was aggressive. He came out, wanting to hit blokes. He wanted to really set a standard and try and to pull his team back into this one. And I feel like post-Origin last year, Stefano's almost turned into a completely different player. Well, let's just read out Stefano's stat line here. 12 runs, 87 metres, not too bad there. 29 post-contact, 7 tackle busts, and he had 24 tackles, 0 missed. Like, that's solid. And that's not something we would have seen from Stefano in an NRL game a year ago, 2 years ago when he was at the Tigers. So I'm really impressed with that. If I'm taking any positives here out of this one for the Melbourne Storm, Stefano's come into this season very switched on. What are your thoughts, Jakey?
Yeah, I think, just listen there. Was it 12 carries and 87 meters?
Yep.
That just sort of shows where the Titans were. He's usually up around 10 meters a carry. Do you know what I mean? But he still sounds like he's laid a decent platform for Melbourne. The thing is, these types of play, like he's played Origin before, these types of players, the biggest thing I watched from the trials was the guys that are in that top echelon of the competition, they were in second gear at stages in the game. So that actually rolls off onto the other players in the team, I feel anyway. So you can see why these sort of scoreboards and the players were a little bit disjointed all the way through. I think he will be pushing Stefano for Origin again, but then my man Adam Fanua-Blake, he's straight into that Origin contention now with the rule changes that has happened. So if he does want to remain that enforcer, that Nelson Asafa-Solomona role that he needs to play for them, he may need to notch it up one or two gears.
I'll tell you this: Craig Bellamy's actually just announced that he's no longer going to be the advisor for the New South Wales Blues too. I don't think Stefano gets picked.
Big possibility.
Yeah, I actually think because Craig Bellamy was in the building there, I think he had a big part to play in Stefano getting picked initially for Origin, especially over guys like Terrell May, Keon Koloamatangi, these sort of guys that were actually performing really well throughout the year.
Yes.
I think that it was a big call to bring Stefano in, and he didn't necessarily perform well in that opening game. I think Craig Bellamy had a lot to do with keeping him in that side, and I think with Craig Bellamy out, and I also think just with Melbourne Storm and their optics, and they want to obviously get back into another grand final this year, there is a lot of teams catching up. I actually don't think Craig Bellamy's going to not let him play, but I think Craig Bellamy's going to talk to him about playing games for the Melbourne Storm and focusing on the Melbourne Storm and trying to get them into that grand final again. What are your thoughts, Soph?
Yeah, as you mentioned, he didn't obviously have the greatest series in Origin last year, and I definitely thought he copped a lot of heat online for it. And obviously, going into the last game, he was talking a little bit, I think, probably too much about the Queensland middles, and I guess the different squad members, and not backing that up, unfortunately, for New South Wales. But as you mentioned, now that Bellamy's or Bellyache's not going to be a part of the coaching squad or the advisory staff, yeah, kind of putting his priorities in place and making sure that the Melbourne is a part of that and high on that list. And as you mentioned, with the new rule changes, we have no idea how that's going to upset, I guess, the different selections for both squads. It'll definitely throw a couple of spanners in the works. But yeah, I think Stefano might be getting, overlooked because of that. But, I hope he proves me wrong and has an amazing season for Melbourne Storm and is pushing for one of those middle spot.
All right. Last thing on Melbourne, guys. I do want to talk about their edge back row position with Eli Katoa out now. I feel like we had an answer to this question only a couple of weeks ago, and ever since these trials have been on, I feel like that's become less and less clear. You've got Joe Chan playing minutes in the right back row position. You had Atavali Lasardi playing there as well. Like, they had a couple of guys fighting for that position, and it didn't really seem like they've been set on who that guy's going to be. Jakey, do you sort of have an idea of who that right back row is going to be in round one?
I don't think they've got an answer at the moment, mate. I look at the Melbourne Storm, and this is probably the making the last 2 years. They actually had a bit of a stuff up with their roster a couple of seasons ago, if you remember. They're very thin. And I just want to jump one of my notes here. Nuss and Pappenhausen aren't there, right? That's a lot of first grade experience. That's a lot of elite playing. That's big game players. Game breakers. Like they're just not there anymore. Obviously, I don't think they've found people to fill those holes. Like if you look at it, they don't I don't see another Nuss there. I don't see another person who can do what Pappenhausen can do. Maybe they end up doing it during the season when they get a bit more confidence under belt and they're all playing together. But at the moment, I think they're in a bit of trouble to start the season. I actually think they're in a little bit of damage control. I can understand why they're trying to get Zach down there because they don't really, when Melbourne come into round one, they haven't lost one in like 2 decades. They may get knocked off round one because I'm not overly convinced that they're holding that sort of aura that they once held.
I'll put the money on it right now, guys. I think Parramatta are paying $3.80 to win in round one over Melbourne. Put the freaking house on Parramatta. Put the house on Parramatta. I reckon they're going to get up for that round one game. And optics-wise, who's probably had the better performance in this week's trials? it is 100% the Parramatta Eels, particularly in that second half. So
Mm.
I'd say put the house on the Parramatta Eels. What are your thoughts, Soph?
Yeah, well, I guess kind of going back to the point of having the second row positions filling in, I think it'll also be interesting. We spoke about earlier how the halves pairing haven't played many games together consecutively. So if there are any injuries or even looking in the origin periods, the inconsistency with the halves pairing as well might have an impact on the second row. And, I guess the previous second row obviously is out this season due to concussion, which is awful. But he's been one of their star players, I think, over the last few years as well. So, despite obviously not being in the spine, he's had a massive impact on their success over the last few years. But I agree, if they can't, I guess, kind of nail down those key positions going into round one. I definitely think Parramatta have got the upper hand, and previously in history they've done really well up against teams like Penrith and Storm. Despite not necessarily being one of the most successful teams, they're always able to kind of pull it out of the hat going into those tougher games.
And it's funny you say that, Soph, because I reckon if Melbourne Storm win that grand final last year, Eli Katoa is your Clive Churchill winner. Like, he was the standout in that grand final. So losing him as well, Jakey, you talked about the NRL experience that they've lost with Pappy and obviously Big Nas. Losing Eli Katoa in that roster as well,
Yeah.
that could be the nail in the coffin where you maybe look at Melbourne Storm and if they don't start too well and they have a similar season to a Penrith Panthers of last year where they drop down the ladder a little bit, they might not be in the 8.
Well, there's a very strong possibility. And, if we talk about their halves, their halves pairings, in the top 3, but they haven't been playing together, So if one of those guys are out, that just applies more pressure to the next bloke. They, you know what I mean? So there's all these little things that Melbourne are going to go through this season that they've got to find ways to fill those gaps with players, and blokes need to stand up, and they actually need to be healthy. The biggest thing that, I'm sort of waiting for is when this Zach Lomax court case gets pulled out, because I find it funny that it's gone to the extent it has, where I think it'll end up working out in some sort of favour in the Melbourne Storm, either acquiring Zach halfway through the year straight away, or who knows? Who knows what happens in the court case? But I think if they can get him, that may give them a little bit more energy going into games, knowing that they've got a Origin and an Australian player coming into their roster, not just a guy that they're sort of getting in there. Players just getting in there to try and fill these gaps.
All right. We've talked about Melbourne for a little bit too long, so we'll move on to the Gold Coast Titans. Obviously, the winners in a big way in this one, and we sort of talked about it as well. Their intensity coming into this game and just the energy throughout the entire contest for me was the difference. Jakey, I think you made a point where the Storm were out enthused a little bit there, especially in the pack. The Titans came out with an unbelievable intensity, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. They really did. They set intentions early. Their thing now is, can they do it through the season? It's all well and good to get up for a trial match, but their thing, is, are they capable of doing it week in, week out? Are their halves of capable of doing what they did on the weekend every single game? Tino is obviously the heart and soul there, but Tino's more than likely going to play close to 30 games again this year with his origin period, the rep period. If they, if they do get into finals, he's going to be tight at the back end of the year. So who's going to actually be there to add to his game? Are they going to rest him? He's coming off, big injuries the last previous seasons. They've got to sort of monitor the way he plays. So it'll be interesting to see what they do for the big frame, and then also how they can get themselves up, not always relying on him during the season.
Well, that's the big watch for me for sure. And I think a big positive to take away, I guess, from this Titans performance is that when he did come off, they looked good still. They still had the momentum through the middle of the field, albeit, a bunch of the other first graders came off from both sides as well, and it was some lighter sides. But I do think that the positive there for the Gold Coast Titans can take away from this game is the fact that when Tino did come off the field, they still were able to put it to the Melbourne Storm a little bit there. So if I'm the Titans, I'm taking a ton of confidence out of this game, and I think the players will certainly be taking plenty of confidence as well. They had a young kid play, I'm going to butcher this name, so bear with me, Sia Latili Faye Marnie, the number 5 there, the winger, for the Gold Coast Titans, who sort of has come out of nowhere, and they reckon he's going to be the starting winger for them as well this year. So congratulations to him. But 18 runs, 132 metres, 50 post contact, 5 tackle busts, 11 tackles on the wing. I tell you what, that's a lot of work for a winger. You don't hear that numbers too often for wingers.
He would have needed an ice bath after the game.
Yeah, I know. We're coming off in a stretcher. Yeah, but he looked good. He looked good. Did you watch too much of the outside backs there for the Gold Coast Titans, Sophie?
No, I didn't get too much of that game, but just listening to those stats, it's, I guess, kind of refreshing to hear, an outside back being involved in defense despite having, quite a high, I guess, kind of involvement in their attacking numbers. You mentioned obviously kind of those tackle busts and things like that, but it shows that he's obviously earned his spot potentially going into round one with, the starting wing position. He's obviously at marker on those kick chases, really putting an effort to kind of blade on the tackles and yardage sets. So he's not just kind of letting things go by past him. He's putting in the extra effort to kind of get involved, which is really good from a young player.
It is good to see. It is good to see. I tell you what, it's good to see wingers actually putting in a defensive effort as well, taking some pressure off the front rowers. I guess one negative from me, if I'm going to be a bit of a negative Nancy on the Gold Coast Titans here, which is hard to do, but Jaden Campbell, AJ Brimson only had 4 runs between them. Like if
you can't have that.
Yeah, you can't have that for an attacking side like the Gold Coast Titans.
I'll tell you why you can't have that. Because they're both runners.
Yeah.
Like that's good. Maybe they're getting coached to feed the ball more, but they're both natural runners. Like I hear that, and they should be doing 4 runs each in the first 10 minutes almost. So like maybe that's a little bit of coaching as well. But that's unbelievable, that stat.
Do you think Hannay is sort of telling them to take a step back for Kinney to do more of the running and attacking stuff, and them just to sort of get the ball out to their other guys on the edges?
He may be, because there's been a lot of times where they've sort of just relied on Brimson and Campbell to run the ball. So my shock isn't really warranted, I suppose, if they're playing a style of footy that is them promoting the ball now more than taking the line on. Maybe Hannay's got some sort of mad scientist thing going on at the moment where he wants to move the ball, and that gives them more opportunities to take off in other parts of the game. So it's what you said before too, I wanted to jump on the back of, where the players went off but the Titans still kicked forward. Is that a Josh Hannay effect, do you think? Because all I've heard is great things about this guy as a coach.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was a big contributor to keeping Tino at the club in the first place as well. Like, Tino could have definitely taken a ton of money and gone to Melbourne, gone to Perth, gone to the Sydney Roosters. We know how much money they've got down there at the Sydney Roosters. So the fact that he was able to stay at the Titans, back them in, and sign a long-term deal like he did, that says a lot about Hannay. But yeah, definitely the younger guys, now that they've jumped on the back of Tino re-signing and their captain having faith in the club and what they're building there, it certainly puts a lot of confidence and a bit of fire in the belly of some of these younger guys. And okay, our captain's with us here, let's go with him. So I think that's obviously a big positive there for the Titans. And your guys like your Tukey Simpkins that came off the bench, the young forward there, jersey 16. Curtis Moran from the Dogs, who I thought was outstanding. You've obviously got guys as well, like your young Arama Halves, who I thought was good. He played a couple of first grade games last year. Cooper Byer, I thought was good in the limited minutes he got. So these young forwards just have a bit of fire in the belly because they know their captain's there. They know their captain's going to be, involved in the club and is believing in what they're trying to build there. A club that hasn't had any final success since their time in the competition. That definitely puts a bit of fire in the belly to want to go forward and obviously hunt in games. So very exciting times for the Titans. Not finals this year, but I think that they will definitely be a bit of a threat. And as you said, Jakey, someone that sides are going to be a little bit worried about.
Just before we move on, I just had a comment about the halves pairing. I think maybe their, potential hesitation with running, they both had quite a few soft tissue injuries over the last 12 to 24 months. And I wonder if that's potentially a reason behind it. They're looking at the positional changes from obviously fullback for both of them to kind of into the halves. But now with Locke and Ilias there, I wonder if that's going to change at all and push one of them potentially back to fullback. Obviously, we know, in the trials that wasn't the case, but, kind of maybe looking at kind of a load management thing being, I guess, kind of the reasons for one of their lower run counts.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great shout. It's a great shout. Maybe that is a little bit of a load management there, but I still think, like, Jaden Campbell had 1 run for 4 metres. Like that is so un-Jaden Campbell, especially when he was taking the line on last year. He had those massive breaks, long field carries. I just think it is, yeah, it's not what I want to see. Even if the plan is to take the load off them and to have them to run less and distribute more, you want them making at least 10 runs a game at the bare minimum if they want to be a successful side this year. Speaking of soft tissue injuries and halves running the ball, we'll move to South Sydney and the Manly Seagulls. Cody Walker, 3 line breaks, 4 tackle busts. If there was any concerns about Cody Walker going into this year, I think he's almost put them to bed there against the Manly Seagulls. What are your thoughts, Jakey? What do you think about old Cody Walker there?
Mate, 100%. And I just want to add too, it helps when you've got Fafita and Latrell playing on the outside of you because people tend to pay a little bit of attention to them. And he's a genius player. He's eyes up footy. The try that he did score, you can see, or coming out of yardage or, middle of the field, it's just catch past to Fafita, catch past to Fafita. That just automatically opens up the lanes a little bit because you're 8 metres out. David Fafita can carry 5 people over the line. So you have to be on him as soon as he gets the ball. So if you've got defenders who already begin over chasing, Cody Walker's smart enough, straighten up, playing the inside dummy, whatever he wants to do. He may score more tries than we think he will this year if he remains on the field.
Yeah, 100%. That's the big if for the South Sydney Rabbitohs is if Cody Walker stays on the field. They'll be a pretty successful outfit this year. Obviously, there was concerns about the 7 jersey as well, guys, because obviously Jonah Glover went down in the Charity Shield, the guy that was supposed to be the number 7 for the Rabbitohs for round 1. Young Ashton Ward came in. I thought he was just as good with his running game, and he was very dangerous, wasn't he, Soph?
Yeah, and obviously it was nice to see, as you mentioned, Cody Walker get through the game with, a couple of nice touches after, again, another injury-stricken season last year. But I guess kind of the Rabbitohs as a whole, quite an unsuccessful season for a lot of their players due to injury as well, which I think probably led to their lower performance despite, I guess the predictions for them at the beginning of the year. But as you mentioned, the young players coming through at the Rabbitohs was good to see, and all of them making through without any injuries has been good. So hopefully we can see that left edge, absolutely rip and tear going into round 1.
It's definitely exciting as a South fan when you've got Cody, Trell, and then you've got big Dave Fafita there as well. Like it's very exciting stuff. It's going to be a good year, hopefully for the Bunnies if those guys are all firing, which they look to be. I'll tell you what, talking about guys not running the football a lot, Brandon Smith, 3 runs for 34 metres. Like, I sort of want him running a little bit more. I know that he's obviously a bigger body defensively. He can just distribute and take the sting out of the game there for the opening couple minutes and then move into a bit more of a dynamic middle forward role. But I sort of want him to run a little bit more. Jakey, are you in the same sort of boat?
I don't think he actually had a lot of opportunities to run. Watching the game, Wayne's big on moving the ball. And I thought that, as I said before, he actually didn't have a lot. He took, I think, 1 or 2 okay, half decent, his usual runs, but he didn't really have the opportunities to. And once they got into that 30-20 attacking zone, you have to give the ball to that left edge. Like, it doesn't really matter what's in front of you. It's about getting the ball to them. That's where your salary cap is, and that's where you're going to do the most damage. Then you got on your right side, you got Jack Whiten. So, like, they've got the luxury of moving the ball either way. So, I don't think maybe we'll see as much running with Smith unless there's just a blatant opportunity for him to do that. But it's the same with the forwards they've got there. Matangi, you've got Murray. Like, just give those blokes the ball, mate. Like you can become way more valuable in different areas. And if he wants to play minutes, it's probably better that he doesn't run as much so he can conserve his energy for defense.
So if I want to talk to you about Tallis Duncan, I thought, especially a guy adjusting, moving from left to right edge to make way for big Dave Fafita, I thought he was pretty good on that right edge, wasn't he?
Yeah, and I mean, he's had obviously, a few games under his belt now, but I think, again, the depth, our favourite word tonight, in the Rabbitohs squad, even kind of going back into the halves pairings, we've got, Humphreys, as you mentioned, Walker, we had the young player, as you mentioned, Glover playing as well, but, their middles as well. We've got Jai Arrow, who's kind of out at the moment with injuries, so if he can get a little bit more time in that edge, going into, round 1 or the first few rounds of the season, I think it'll definitely benefit the squad. And, as we mentioned, Cameron Murray coming back from injury and things like that, it'll hopefully give a little bit more opportunity for Brandon to kind of be a little bit more creative with his running. But they've got strike power everywhere. They've got Peter on the bench coming on for potentially for Brandon Smith, who might be able to move, into the middle. Who I saw towards the end of the game on the weekend had some really good defensive tackles on their line. He'd come out shooting to try and put a couple of shots on, and Talis Duncan isn't the biggest second row in the world either. So I guess kind of having some bigger players around him, like I guess kind of you said, the Jack Whiten's quite a large centre slash half. So having the experience of him as well around him, and whatever halfback ends up playing alongside him, I think would be. I guess kind of a good pairing. The left edge of Rabbits has been, I guess, kind of the talking points over the last few seasons. But I think if they can get their positional consistency, I think the right edge will be potent as well.
Even just that opening 10 minutes, the first try to Campbell Graham, everyone expects the ball to go left. Bang, bang, bang. They go
Bang,
right.
bang, bang.
Boom.
Yeah.
And it's Campbell Graham scoring that try. So I think that it's almost going to be a little bit of a decoy edge at times because everyone's going to expect the ball to go left. They're going to prep for the ball to go left. And then they're not going to be accounting too much for guys like White and guys like Tallis, guys like Campbell Graham. Still plenty of talent on that right side that they can really exploit as well. And the good thing about Cody playing both edges now as well, he's had time on both the left and the right throughout the last 2 years. I think Cody's roaming both sides and he's going to exploit defenses on both sides of the field as well. He's going to be a real threat, Jakey.
I totally agree with you. The biggest thing I got just looking at the whole Rabbitohs team and the whole game of the coverage, did you notice how all of them were smiling? They look happy. They look like a happy footy team now. That's probably the scariest thing. When you've got a bunch of blokes all ready to pat each other on the back and they're feeling good, that's when you know the chemistry is really rocking and a rolling there. So I expect them to come out through the first, handful of games this year and really set a standard. I have the feeling also, I want to chuck this out there for you too. I see Matt Duffy as possibly being the potential buy of the year, just with the way that the NRL is played at the moment. He's come on Charity Shield. He was the only real regular and well-known first grader that played for South. Had an absolute cracking game against his old club. Then come on in a sort of different role this week and put together that try backing up through the middle. Same sort of thing like Fuller, a little bit of a smaller body, but he's got all these other attributes, his speed, his agility, footwork to be able to turn on a dime, even got that nice little offload, can ball play. Does he see himself in the team pretty much every week due to the skill set he has in the way that rugby league's being played at the moment?
Yeah, you'd have to think so. And just the side that they've got, the depth that they've got this year, like even a young Tommy Fletcher I thought was good when he came on. Like, obviously Hubner, you've got Bronson, you've got even Jamie Humphries who can play a bit of middle as well. The depth that they've got this year and the side that Wayne's going to have to put together, far out. If anyone can do it, Wayne can, but that is a absolute mission and a half, and especially getting the size into that pack as well. Celestia Tata had to trial for New South Wales Cup, so he wasn't in this game, but he'll be a guy that will feature probably in this 17. They've got a young guy, Elijah Keung, who is compared a little bit to almost a little bit of a Sonny Bill, just with his build.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, so okay. I'd be watching out on him. He's definitely a really good guy to watch. He's got some really good hands, but a bigger body that he can hit as well. Very aggressive. They've got some really good young guys. Geordie Mazzoni off the bench as well, the number 18. We got him from the Bulldogs. He's very, very good. Like they've got some great players. Depth across the park. Sophie touched on it, but depth across the competition again. This side has definitely got that in spades, and it's going to be great. And then the guys they got in first grade, like your Murrays, like your Fafitas, they're going to be very, very good. One little thing I want to touch on, and I'm not going to read too much into it because it's a trial, but Cam Murray had 7 runs for 39 metres. A little bit.
I just think Cam Murray taking the field's a win.
Yeah.
To be honest, that talk about heart and soul of the team. He's that. I think he's just doing what like a stalwart does. He just warms himself up for the trials, and then I've got no doubt he'll be playing Origin by the middle of the year.
Yeah. 100%. So, if anything else on South before we touch on Manly?
Yeah, I guess kind of wanted to talk about what I think the impact of Wayne Bennett coming back to the Rabbits this year. You obviously mentioned them all being smiling during the game and being super happy. We know Wayne Bennett, among a couple of other high-profile coaches, is just really good people managers. And potentially not being the best clinical coaches despite his experience. I think he's probably the best at it in the game in terms of managing his players, and so I think that's probably where the happiness and the confidence is probably coming from. And their outside backs with Dufty, it's a hard one. They've got so much depth. Again, they've got obviously Johnson, Latrell, Graham, Tass, Penatani, Munro, obviously as well. They've got White and Campbell Graham. There's so many people to choose from. So it'd be interesting to see where he fits, and if that's on the extended bench, I think that'll be a bonus. But I don't know that he'd crack the starting squad. I think it'll be probably the 17th, 18th, or 19th man if he's able to crack that top spot. But as we mentioned, if they're able to kind of stay injury free, I think he'll struggle to get some consistent game time. But if there are any injuries in those key outside back positions, I think he'll be pushing for it with obviously his previous NRL experience at the Dragons and then having played a few years in the Super League.
Dufty will be an interesting one. He is on a New South Wales Cup contract, so they have to get an exemption before round 8 to use him in the opening rounds. But certainly will definitely be a guy to keep an eye on. And we've got a spot open in the top 30, which we need to sort of lock in by round 8. Ashton Ward's not in the top 30 at the moment. And then obviously Matt Dufty. So they've got a big call to make there. I think it might go to Ashton Ward out of necessity because they need to use someone for round 1. It's going to be a really, really interesting one, what they decide to do. I even see Matt Dufty using South as a stopgap. And if they see enough out of him, he'll sign with Perth. I think that's probably what we see from Matt Dufty. And I think it'll be a pretty under-the-radar signing for Perth because if he can kill it in the lower grades at South, maybe get a couple of opportunities throughout the year at the back end if South go really well, then maybe he is that undercover signing for Perth if they aren't able to get a fullback and he slots in there and he's playing consistent first grade again. So that'll definitely be the watch. Jakey, I'm going to ask you straight up, where did it go wrong for the Manly Seagulls?
We've got to use the phrase "it was only a trial," but if there was a team that I don't think was anywhere near where they should be, it was them. And I think South did play a lot into that with how their bigger names turned up in that first 25 to 30 minutes. I don't know where Manly, and I know they didn't have their full strength team out there, but I don't know if they're together. I don't know if they're in the fight together as a full squad. I don't know if the coaches and all the the bigger name players are all going the same way. So I hope that they do find something because I think Manly have so much. They've just got so many good players that they can pretty much do anything. But I just don't know if they're all going the same way.
It's a shit question to ask because we saw young Tolu Kula re-sign with the club today, which I think is definitely a little bit of a positive. But DCE left. Garrick's going to the Roosters next year. Do you think that everyone's looked at that situation, the drama that's happened with the contract negotiations with Tom Trbojevic and Jakey Trbojevic in particular, and maybe they're a little bit off it at the moment? Is there a chance that there might be a little bit of a disconnect there, Soph, with the group?
Yeah, I was thinking about it as well. Obviously, the rumours going around with the Trbojevic brothers and their hesitancy to re-sign with the club despite being as the heart and soul. Obviously with their, I guess, consistent team over the last few years starting to separate, I think that might be, at the start of the downfall. But I think it was Chad Townsend who predicted them to come last and be the wooden spoon for this upcoming season. And I hope that doesn't happen, but it'll definitely be interesting to see where they fall if they can't kind of get a good start to the season. If I don't think they'd be able to crawl their way back, particularly if there's a bit of drama in-house with the staff and some of those key players, as you mentioned.
I'd be making a phone call to Willie Peters' manager if I was them.
Yeah, you reckon that Willie Peters will end up at Manly?
Well, if you're looking for someone to bring a winning culture, which is what they may need this year going into next year, Willie Peters has pretty much won everything that you can think of at this moment in time, including being a part of the Australian coaching staff. He's knocking on the door. He's done it the right way. He's been an assistant coach at a couple of teams. He was actually my assistant coach with the City team in 2017. Now he's gone over to England and done what he's done there. He's been a part of the Australian coaching staff. So he's earned his stripes. And if the first coach that gets dropped in the NRL is Seabold, you'd think that the coaching merry-go-round, you think Willie Peters comes into that position.
Do you have much to do with him in that City team?
Oh, mate, just, having a chat over a beer, doing stuff at training, stuff like that. But, he's the difference that I sort of noticed with Willie and those things, he's actually a champion bloke. Like, I know everyone says that about everyone, but he is legitimately one of those people. He's just a good bloke who's involved in rugby league, who has a crack and does his best.
What are your thoughts, Soph? Do you reckon, how long do you think Anthony Seibold has to get Manly on firing this year? Or do you reckon they'll give him the season and make a call afterwards?
Oh, based on the history of the last couple of seasons in the NRL, I'm not sure that he'll make it to the end of the year if they have a slow start. Unfortunately, I think he'll be on the chopping board if they aren't able to scrape a few wins together.
Yeah, look, I do tend to agree, especially with, as you said, the track record for a couple of coaches in this competition. It doesn't look great. Are we taking much out of the fact that both Trbojevic brothers didn't feature in this one?
I mean, how consistent has Tom been over the last few years, despite obviously how good of a player we know he can be? He's obviously been inconsistent with injuries and things like that too, and Jakey with obviously some concussions and origin appearances, he's been a little bit inconsistent as well, but I don't know, you can't rely on two players to, I guess, kind of be the point of success. So obviously them not playing would have made some difference, but I don't think it would have made too much of a difference.
What about you, Jakey?
If those two blokes aren't on the coach's side, I think it's very difficult for everyone else to sort of jump on board. And I made the point a little while ago to Tom. I think they're sort of waiting to see if Manly have the guts to move Seibold on. Like, Tom Trbojevic resigned for 1 year. There was rumours of him going to another NRL club, which just wouldn't fit. Then there was rumours of him going to the Super League. Then all of a sudden he resigns for 1 year. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't know if he's playing the field, sort of waiting to see how they go this year, if, how it sort of all plans out. But it looks like it's a slow sinking ship.
Yeah, he apparently had a deal to go to Leeds. Leeds Rockets.
Massive, yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's going to be a really interesting watch for sure to see what the situation there is. I actually think, and this might be a big call for myself, but I'm happy to put myself in the firing line a little bit here. I think this is Jake Trbojevic's last season.
Based on his concussions?
Yeah, based on these concussions, just based on the fact his body's probably slowing down a little bit as well when you're looking at the modern lock forward and you're looking at how I guess he's been used over the last couple of years. He's been used as an absolute battering ram at stages, playing big minutes week to week, when he probably isn't that player either. Like, I think he's probably a really good 40-minute, 50-minute player, can bash out those minutes, a little bit of ball playing in there, but he's been playing 80 minutes. And he's been in the battering ram, making truckloads of tackles week to week. Like, I just don't know if the way that he's playing currently is going to make him last very long in the NRL at the stage that we're at right now with the game. What are your thoughts, Jakey?
Yeah, it's a possibility. Someone's going to have to pretty much drag him from Manly to not be playing. You know what I mean? That's the type of person he is. And I think he's at that stage where he knows his body, he knows himself, he's a mature person. And I've got no doubt he'll have a job at Manly for, as long as he's alive. So if the call does come, I think he'll be making it himself. But if the way that the game is going, he's at the sort of back end of his career where the game's sort of speeding all the way up.
Well, I'll tell you what, if he's not playing for Manly, he's definitely playing for Mona Vale, that's for sure. Guys, we'll talk about quickly the Broncos game. Did you guys get tuned into the Broncos and Hull KR game?
I did get a bit of it, yes.
I saw the mini or the highlights. I didn't get to watch the whole game. I woke up to the score and was surprised, actually.
I'll tell you what, though, even though the Broncos lost, I'm taking more positives than I am negatives out of that one, to be fair.
I know. Mate, the media's pumped it up like the world's ended. Like,
yeah.
They had their opportunities to actually beat themselves. Not to say I'm not taking anything away from Hull KR. Brisbane had ample opportunities to win the game, and they just didn't. And that had the fact too, Hull KR turned up. Maybe Brisbane weren't as consistent through the larger periods of the game as what Hull KR were, but Brisbane definitely had opportunities to win that game.
And a couple of these boys played against England as well, and maybe they sort of looked at this game going, we beat England 3-0. We're going to come in and dust this side. Yep. And they didn't expect Hull KR to come out with the intensity that they did. I mean, the opening exchanges, Big Tom and Moan and Suasu Su, former NRL player for the Newcastle Knights, they came out and battered them through the middle at the start. I guess guys like Paddy and Payne had to sort of adjust a little bit and bring that intensity as well and try and match it. Because I know, especially watching the opening 5 minutes, it seemed like they took a while to adjust there. Even attacking wise as well. You were talking about the fact that Hull KR turned up, but they turned up attacking wise as well. Every time that they got an opportunity to attack in the own end of the Brisbane Broncos, pretty much 4 out of 5 times they scored points. So they turned up both ways. They turned up with their intensity in defence, but they also turned up with their attack. Guys like Peter Hiku, I thought was outstanding. Yeah. The young halfback, Mikey Lewis, had to move to fullback with their fullback going off, and they still managed to pull off a win there. So I'll tell you what, Hull KR turned up. Brisbane Broncos, there's a few question marks there. However, I am taking more positives for Brisbane than I am negatives, because I just feel like the way that Reece Walsh came into this game and the half chances, yeah, sure, there was a few passes out and a few things that he wanted to take back, but I do feel like he's come in with a really good energy. And I feel like against some of the NRL sides, when they come back, they take the notes from this game and they try and put it into this year. I think this is probably the best thing to happen to the Broncos, because they're used to winning. They haven't lost a game in a very long time. They went on a streak, obviously, since Reece Walsh drank the toilet water there. But it's the first game they've lost, I think, since round 21. So I think, and that's including the international games as well. So I think it's the biggest reality check and the best reality check the Brisbane Broncos could have. What do you reckon, Soph?
Yeah, as you said, they've had quite a long winning streak, and, with, I guess, the international players as well, probably just turning up, going through the motions. Couldn't play catch up once Hull KR got to a hot start, and just couldn't play catch up to their lead. So yeah, going into, I guess, kind of the first few rounds of the season, it'll probably put a bee in their bonnet, and hopefully they're able to kind of adjust going back into round one, and make them a little bit hungrier and less complacent.
Any other standouts or anything from the Brisbane Broncos end? Any players that you want to mention in this one, guys? Anything else you got on this game?
No, I just thought Jensen going off in that first couple of minutes sort of rattled him a little bit. That's when I seen that, I thought, oh, you know what? That this could swing Hull KR's way for a little bit here, because Jensen is that sort of glue in the middle. I know he's not the big name in their team, but he's that sort of in the middle workhorse, takes those carries, makes those run, does those 1%ers, because Carrigan and Haas are obviously doing a lot of other things. He's that real 1%er, middle player, and I think that sort of showed him parts of the game.
Yeah, look, I do agree. Guys, let's talk about Vegas. Obviously, Vegas coming up this weekend. Super excited for it. Who is the side, before we get into the games, out of the 4 sides playing, the Knights, the Cowboys, the Bulldogs, and the Dragons, who is the most likely side out of this crop of teams to make the top 8 this year? Sophie, I'll start with you.
My guess is the Doggies. They had quite a successful game in their most recent trial. But, and obviously, have done quite well in the last season or two. So they're my guess for most likely to make the top 8.
Didn't you have the Dogs in the spoon?
That's so funny.
Jakey, what about you, mate?
Yeah, I think the Dogs are the obvious ones there. I think the Dragons have the potential to get in the 8. And tell you what just shocked me, I was looking at the Cowboys team here. That's an outstanding team. And I've got them coming wooden spoon. So, it's a funny one. And then you've obviously got the Knights there who will be thereabouts as well. But I think the Bulldogs are the clear-cut top 8 team within these 4 teams.
All right, well, let's get stuck into the games. The first one is the Knights and the Cowboys. And, Jakey, I want to sort of jump off the back of what you were just saying there. They've had a really good trial period too, haven't they? The side that they've put together in the trials, and especially in that dusting against the Penrith Panthers in that second week, albeit it was against a reserve grade Panthers side, but they looked really, really confident. Reid Marnie looks like he's in probably the best shape he's been in. He looks really, really confident in his ability as well. Guys like Jake Clifford had an outstanding trial period too. Depending on what the team lists are, because we don't have the team list currently. We'll have them by the time this podcast comes out. But just pending the team list, I think Clifford maybe does take that 5'8" spot. I just have a feeling that since Clifford's come out and killed it in the trials, I think they're going to backtrack on that and go with him. What are your thoughts? Are you going to go Purdue or Clifford, Jakey?
I think if they want two different halves, like Dearden's obviously taken the line on, where Clifford's a bit more of a steady half and can kick the ball a little bit better than Dearden, I think they will have that halves pairing of Clifford and Dearden for the Cowboys.
What about you, Soph?
Yeah, I thought with his performance in the trials, it'd be a no-brainer to pair with Didden. Obviously, Didden's quite an experienced half and has been playing consistently for a very long time, whereas Clifford's kind of been, in and out of the top squad in reserve grade. So if he can get some consistency this season, I definitely think it could be a long-term pairing.
And I think as well, what probably cements Purdue's move back to the centres, couple injuries, but also Zach Labart, who I thought was another standout during the trials. He's suspended for 2 games, so he'll be out of this one. He won't be able to play. So I think they've got to move Purdue back in. I think it'll be Tom Chester, the young kid that's had 2 back-to-back ACL injuries there over at the Cowboys. He's come back. He looks fresh. I think he'll take that spot. I think they've rested him, I think, at least for the first or second trial. But he does look good. I'm hearing good things about Tom Chester. So I think he will take the other centre spot. There is a little bit concern around their pack and a couple of injuries there. They're not going to have Griffin Neame to start the year. He's obviously out for the first couple games. They've got a couple of other older heads out. But as you said, Jakey, it is still a very good team. And I think that they, especially with what we've seen from the Knights, especially against the Bulldogs this year, or at least in the trials, I think the Knights have come in a little bit underdone, a little bit underprepared, and I think the Cowboys might blitz them here. What are your thoughts?
I think there's potential there. I'm just looking at what's in front of me. I think if Smith plays 7 and they've got Brown at 6, it's just a better looking team with Kalen Ponga at 1 for me. I think Kalen Ponga, as we all know, is going to be the major factor on how they actually go with setting tries up and scoring them. I really like their 1 to 7 with that. So if you got Ponga, Marju, Best, Gagai, Young, Brown, and Smith, that's got points written all over it. Marju and Young coming out of yardage, massive. Best and Gagai, solid veteran Gagai and defense, and Bradman Best is also great out of yardage. So I think it's going to be close. I'm actually going to pick the Knights. I think they've got just a little bit more togetherness than what the Cowboys do. Like Reed Money in at 9, new player. So and Matty Lodge at 10. I'm just looking at their team and I just think that the Knights have a little bit more, in my opinion.
What about you, Soph? It's a tough one, I guess, to pick to start, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm wondering where they're going to put Fletcher Sharp. And in the Knights, obviously he's been, I guess a bit of a star in their squad. Young player, electric, can pull anything from anything. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can fit him in the squad with, obviously the new halves pairing and KP at the back. But you're right, having, Lodge, who's a little bit of an older, more experienced player, but obviously is kind of at the back end of his career. It'll be interesting to see, as you said, with, the new lock, potentially uncertain halves pairing as well with Cowboys. I want to say Cowboys, but I agree. I think Newcastle might just have the edge.
I'm gonna go against the grain here. I'm gonna go for the Cowboys. I just feel like they're gonna show up and they're gonna blitz them. Just with what I've seen from them in the trials early, their attack that they've got to a display, especially if Purdue is at centre. I think that things are going to open up for the Cowboys if Clifford can continue that form that we've seen from him in the trials. They do get the best out of a guy like Matt Lodge. Really go with the Newcastle Knights in the pack. Got to keep in mind the Knights, compared to packs in this competition, they probably have a little bit of a lighter pack, especially depth-wise. So I think that the Cowboys really have an opportunity to blitz them there. I don't think they're going to be the favourite for this game by any stretch. So I am going to go the Cowboys. Helam Lukey is another one for me that I think has been outstanding throughout the trials. So I'm going to go the Cows. I'm going to go against the grain. We'll obviously talk about it next week if I'm wrong. The next game, obviously the Bulldogs and the Dragons. Jakey, your team, the Dragons, obviously with a little bit of a tough start there against the South Sydney Rabbitohs. But it is a trial. We're not reading too much into trials here in Momentum. What are your thoughts on this one? Where do you see it going?
I'll put the trial down to looking forward to Vegas. So I'm not buying too much into that. But I I'm not sold on Burton playing. I think they're trying to like sort of have it a little bit more low key than what it is. I think that Sean O'Sullivan has every chance of playing for Burton. And that's just me being conservative, as being, I think having my Bulldogs head on. If there is like a little bit of strain of Hemi and you lose your number 6 in the first couple of minutes of the game, you're chasing your ass the whole game. So they may have O'Sullivan have Burton out fully and, bring another player into that 1 to 19. I'm going for the Dragons. Even though what happened in the Rabbitohs trial, it only sort of I felt start going that way when Gutherson left the field. I think Gutherson, as I've said, is the key for them this year. Valentine Holmes is back in the centres. He's going to bring confidence off the bat. He's another strike weapon for him. I think Daniel Atkinson's only going to get better. There's something. The most scary thing about footy players is when you have a player that's eager to learn and wanting to get better and probably hasn't gone as well as he thinks he can. That's when they can kick. I think the forward pack looks pretty well balanced. I'm hoping Hamish Stewart starts at 13. Sewer, Big Luch in the back row. So they've got all that. There's a mixture there that I feel they can beat the Bulldogs over in Vegas.
I'm super torn. I think this is a harder game to pick out of the two for sure. Soph, what are your thoughts?
I'm a massive Dragons fan, so I can't go against them. So I'm going to say Dragons, but I do also think that the Bulldogs, it could definitely go either way. And Sean O'Sullivan, I think, had a good trial game, obviously after Burton went off with the hamstring twinge. So as you mentioned, if they're going to be a little bit sneaky with their team list, and even having Sean O'Sullivan kind of in that 19 space or the top 19 space, they could change it anywhere up to the hour leading into the game. So whether or not Burton clears, through captain's run and things like that will be, I guess we'll have to wait and see till the end of the week. But, I can't go past my team, so I have to say Dragons.
Look, I'm going to go against the grain here as well. I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to go with the Dogs. I like what I've seen from them early, especially if Critter is moving over to that left-hand side. I really like the optics of that left-hand edge as well with Kikau and obviously Critter there. If Burton does play, I just love the optics of it. I think that if they really stuck up that left-hand side and that's an attacking weapon for them this year, it's going to be very dangerous. And it definitely threw the Knights off and they tore the Knights to shreds with that side the other week. So if that's the way they are planning to go, or if they were just trying to throw the competition off guard and they move Critter back into the right edge, bit of mind game sort of stuff there from Ciraldo, we'll have to wait and see. I tend to agree, Jakey. I don't think Burton will play. I've named him there purely off the news that he is good to go, and they've named him, and he has made the trip over to Vegas with the boys. So I'm naming him specifically off that. However, and this is, I guess, the question I want to throw to you guys, I think this is where the six-man bench changes the game. Let's just say, obviously, with the optics around Burton, a little bit of an injury there. Do they name him in jersey 18 and 19? And then if the Bulldogs are down and it's the last couple of minutes and they want to get the W, they put Burton on in the last 15 minutes to try and get a bit of an attacking edge. What are your thoughts, Jake?
I just don't see him getting risked. If there's, it's they've come out and said, "No, it's sweet," but if there's a little bit of mind games behind it, you just don't risk that kind of caliber of play. In the travel over there, acclimatising, getting his hammy right. Like, I've got no doubt sitting on a plane for 18 hours, even though the injury happened 5 or 6 days before, is still going to have an effect on every other muscle that's around him that's going to have to take more of the load if it does need to be supported. So I think it's touch and go. I would put it this way. I wouldn't be surprised if he played, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't playing.
And even with Leo Thompson as well being ruled out for a couple of weeks now with a soft tissue injury, I think you're right. The optics doesn't look great for him playing, so you could see it probably going either way. Soph, what are your thoughts? Burton in or out?
I think I tend to agree in terms of not wanting to risk it too early. As you mentioned, obviously, in a long time sitting on a flight, everything gets a bit tight, bit of swelling, and even just, I guess, the unfamiliarity of the training facilities and the schedule, the time change, all of that's going to have an impact. And, if they are going to play him and they are able to kind of get a lead early, I think they'll take him off. But yeah, I'm not sure that it's worth risking it for round one.
Alrighty, well, that's your Vegas preview. Now, there is one more thing I want to touch on, guys. I know that we've obviously gone over time here already, so I'll keep it nice and quick. Riley, our good mate from Green Palm Sports, Jakey, has thrown in a question for us to finish us off. Obviously, There was a rule change with the captains in the press conferences now. So captains will no longer feature in press conferences after games. It'll only be the coach. What are your thoughts? Jakey?
I don't really understand it. I think it's good to get the coach's view on most things, but it's also good to get the players in there. I've got no doubt the captains will be high-fiving each other, not having to go out there and talk to people after a loss of a game and all that sort of stuff. But I'm pretty used to seeing the captain and the coach sticking solid through a good win or a bad defeat. So it's going to be interesting, but. To be honest, it's different, and I'd probably rather having the captain and the coach together.
Soph, what are your thoughts?
I think it'll be interesting. I wonder if they're going to ramp up the halftime and post game interviews then, because they're no longer in the interviews with the coaches. But yeah, I can see both sides to it. Obviously, being a player myself, and after the game, the last thing you really want to do, particularly after a loss, is sit in front of a camera and have to answer potentially redundant questions or repetitive questions. And a lot of the time, you just see the players sitting there anyway, and not always contributing. But I can also see the benefit of having them there and having a kind of more holistic view of the game. Obviously, the coach is in the box and isn't able to kind of comment on I guess the kind of atmosphere on the field. But yeah, I can see both sides to it, so I'm not super fussed either way. But yeah, my prediction is that they're probably going to up the halftime and after game interviews to kind of make up for it.
Yeah, you'd have to think so. Especially with how long they were interviewing Reece Robson. They interviewed him for dead set 30 minutes on the weekend as well, albeit
he would have been stoked.
albeit there was the lightning thing. They definitely milked him for everything he was worth. So we'll see. We'll definitely see if it does get ramped up there. But guys, that was your first episode of Momentum, albeit it was a pretty long one. We smashed out 2 hours there. Guys, I appreciate you guys sticking strong and plugging this one out. But definitely a great first episode. We got through plenty there. So appreciate you both coming on, and keen to see you both next week. We go through all of this, and hopefully I'm not too wrong going against the grain with a couple of these Vegas tips.